things that went well, things that need to be improved, and how do I go out there and have conversations with those people to make it better or acknowledge whatever they're going through.
Hey everyone, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing guest experiences and make more memories. You will notice that my normal partner in crime, Danny, is not here today, but we do have one of my favorite people of all time and one of my mentors, Mr. Armando Lanuti, in the house.
Up what's party people? How you doing? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. Just keeping the skis pointed downhill, trying to let the thighs relax from all these 75 hard workouts and stuff like that we've been doing. And
we are both at that halfway point, that halfway mark. You know, they call it like the quitter's week.
Yes,
right. And we're trying not to be that.
You can squeeze the family time and a little bit of the extra workouts and the extra reading, all of those things that are part of that program. Like now, it's the part where I'm finding I really have to buckle down and pre-schedule those times, or it is not happening.
Well, and we were very, very smart about our timing and decision and seasonality in the Midwest. You know, it's -20 with wind chill in January when we decided to start this.
Let's have a required workout outside for 45 minutes every day. Yeah.
I've made better decisions
this
week.
I don't have a cold plunge, but I just, start stripping layers off as we go.
Yeah.
What's going on outside of business? How's life?
Life is good. For those that don't know, I've got 3 boys and they keep me incredibly busy. Yeah. Ironically, this is our off season. Only one of them is in a sport at the moment, right?
Nice.
We got one in basketball. But we're getting ready to kick off 3 in baseball, 2 in football, and 1 in gymnastics. It all starts in April. And, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'll be coaching on 4 of those teams, right? And, with that off season, we're catching up on The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And we've obviously got to hit those extended cuts and make sure they're getting every ounce.
All 6.5 hours.
Oh yeah, per episode or per movie for sure.
I love that. One, if anybody had any doubts that we are a team of power nerds, just know we are indoctrinating our children in the ways of the Force from day one.
Yes.
Whether it's Star Wars, jammies, and all the way through. So that's good. It's really good. So what are some of their responses to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit stuff? Because it's like a little bit more intense than your average thing. But how are they gravitating towards it?
Well, we went through during COVID, we went through the Marvel series, right? So they got to kind of go through that and understand the idea of movies building upon each other.
Sure.
And now with this, I had to make sure that we were ready at our boys' age to go down this path. So I'm actually on my second way through the seasons or all the movies because I need to watch them first. Trying to make sure, are there parts I need to be prepared to talk about? Or are there parts that, maybe get a little bit too graphic and all that kind of stuff? But they've absolutely loved it.
That's
right?
awesome.
And we're almost done. We're about an hour and a half through the Return of the King, so we're almost through the whole season.
That's good stuff.
And but they're even paying attention. Like, why does the guy in the new movies for The Hobbit not look like the guy from the movies from The Hobbit? They even pick up on some of those little things and how that's played out. So it's been fun.
Yes, just feeding the curiosity. That's a great question.
So.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and they love games. They love my middle son is very much into the fantasy novels of dragons, wizards, magic. So this is right up his alley. He absolutely loves it and adores it.
Started diving down Harry Potter yet with them?
We have. So we've done all the Harry Potter, and we just bought the illustrated series because we've watched the movies. We've read short books because they've been younger. You can buy the different synopsis, books designed for younger kids to read that are simplified stories, and now we're getting into the real deal.
That's wicked. Yeah. Okay, I didn't even know they had illustrated versions. That's just going to be
they're pretty, to the bookshelf. Pretty amazing for sure.
Up on the bookshelves, we have a nice collection of Start With Why and Keith Cunningham, all John Maxwell and illustrated Harry Potter.
Well, and it's funny, along those lines is. I'm very much so was raised on technology, gaming. I'm a nerd. We've talked about that plenty and different things that we've done. And I love that for my kids. We build esports centers. So I've got an esports desk in my basement that my kids can all play on. But at the same time, there's a value we put on books and reading and those kind of things. So, every morning, our boys, I don't care how late they stay up, they're up by like 5:45, 6 a.m. So, but we don't do TV in the morning, right? So you got to read a book, right? So they're reading books in the mornings before they go to school, those kind of things, and then they get their game time in the afternoon after they've done their chores.
Sounds like a recipe
we
for
play
success.
both sides of the screen time and book time.
Well, that'll be good though, that they just are learning that there's good entertainment and stuff to get out of both. So that way you don't have just the digital pacifier.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's jump in here. A couple of things that, as you and I were chatting about what we wanted to talk about for this episode and just zooming back out on a couple of things, was one, looking at strategic planning for your business. So you being in the unique position of having worked at Creative Works and then buying in as an owner and taking on that new set of responsibilities over the last 10 years, looking at how you've had to be very intentional about your growth as a leader, having a lot more, it's not just one team, one department, one this or that. It's everything is under your helm and responsibility. So a couple of the things that I wanted to chat with you, and I know some of these, but for the benefit of our audience, like, what are some of the things that you are doing very intentionally on a regular basis, whether it's daily or weekly, to create time to actually work on the business instead of in the business? Because I know that we as a leadership group talk about how do we do that? What do we need to be focusing on? What tools or habits do we need to have in place? What are some of those that you've had the most success with over the last few years?
Yeah, I think that as a leader, one of the things that you have to do is first and foremost take care of yourself, right? It's that old adage of, put your mask on first in the airplane when they talk about that, and you have kids, and you have to do that same thing, whether it's me leading our leaders or whether it's our leaders leading their teams, whatever the case may be. So the first thing I do is try and focus on, how do I make myself better? How do I bring in new content, new ideas, whether it is through reading Audible books, social media, following different, I like to call them hustle porn, so to speak, providers on social media, right? Where they're
that term,
right? Where they're like, hey, like, you got to get up, you got to do these things. And you find a lot of good content that way though, too, right? Like, everything is in doses, but it's finding what are those pieces of inspiration, what are those thought-provoking things, and we as a team have done a good job of bringing in different voices, whether it be a Simon Sinek, a Gary Vee, an Alex Hormozi, a Brene Brown, and all those different voices, and then we try and shape it to be our way, because Creative Works, for all intents and purposes, is a little bit of a unicorn in what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
But we're not an alien either, right? Like, we're unique in a lot of the things that we do. So you can't just take, a manufacturing book and apply it directly over because of some of the things that we do. And so we have to create the Creative Works way out of all those different components and what resonates with us, what resonates with our team. And I think that's really important. And then what my job is to remove obstacles. My goal is, where do I see obstacles, whether it be in our process, in our product, in our quality, in our team, resources, whatever the case may be. And I have to focus on, how do I remove those obstacles so that everybody else can do what they need to do to find success for us.
And I think that we see that in a number of ways. You still having regular weekly meetings with each of the department heads, us meeting collectively as a group once a week, us meeting as a team, an entire Creative Works team once a week, to keep our finger on the pulse of where some of those things are at. I think one other piece that I think is very undervalued is just actively asking our team members, and we started doing this, of, hey, on a very regular basis, whether it's a part of meeting agendas or anything else, is twofold. One, acknowledging our team members as human beings outside of the walls of Creative Works first, and constantly soliciting, hey, what are you seeing that could be better? What's a friction point? All of that has made a huge difference in there. We were talking with Scott Logan and what he was doing with his team, and we wrapped on that episode, and he was like, I got to get up there and see how you guys are doing some meetings and things, because I was like, man, even if you just start your regular scheduled meetings with like wins, where everybody's sharing that, so that way you're again connecting outside of the walls. What's a personal win? What's a professional win? Giving people the opportunity to connect and feel more open and trust and bonds with the team.
You've got to ensure that that the relationships aren't all purely transactional,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, you still got a business to run. You
Yeah.
still got things to get done, and everybody has to be accountable for their responsibilities.
Yeah.
But it is understanding that, hey, this team member had a flat tire on the way into work this morning. This team member had a child that was sick. Whatever the case may be, as things come up, it doesn't help if you can't humanize the situation, because you would want that same empathy to you if you got a flat tire on the way into work. If one of your kids was up all night puking or whatever the case may be, right? And making sure that you can humanize your team, I think, is super, super important. And I think along those lines, we also, as soliciting feedback, we do a weekly report, right? Like, at the end of every week, what's your high? What's your low? How would you rate your stress? How would you rate your workload? What can we do? Kind of questions, and making sure that you're not just doing it as lip service, like that. Okay, I got this feedback of things that went well, things that need to be improved, and how do I go out there and have conversations with those people to make it better, or acknowledge whatever they're going through, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I constant feedback and collaboration. I love that. And so one of the tools that I've seen us use, and we started it a few years ago, and we're actually getting into the second iteration of rolling it out again, is the
know where you're going with this.
Vivid Vision. Yeah. And so this is something that when you first dropped this into my brain, it made a lot of sense for a number of reasons. And having read the book by Cameron Herold, who wrote this, that essentially, first I watched the YouTube video where he was like, everybody just needs to chuck their mission and vision statement right in the toilet, because nobody reads that shit. It's like it's not a part of the regular piece. Like, it needs to be something that is alive and something that can be enacted upon, not just ideals that are kind of posted up on a break room wall. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what the Vivid Vision is for our listeners and watchers that are out there, and how does that a little bit different than a mission and vision statement in the traditional sense, and then we can kind of get into some of the details of how it's serving. Yeah.
So I think, again, we've taken components and pieces from a lot of different places. So we created our why statement coming from Start With Why with Simon Sinek. And that is the company's North Star, right? The infinite pathway of where we're going, what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do. And that is almost like that altruistic view of where we're going to go, but we know we can never fully achieve it, right? We want to create memories for everybody in the world. We know that that's our goal, it's our North Star, but it's hard to fully ever achieve, but we want everybody rowing in that same direction. What the Vivid Vision does is it takes that concept and that idea of where you want to go, and then it breaks it down, and Cameron really likes this idea of 3-year chunks. Right? 1 year is too short. You don't have quite enough time to fully enact something. 5 years, 10 years that sometimes people create, like, too much changes. Yeah. Too many things change in that long of a time horizon. So looking at that 3-year chunk is kind of like a good middle ground from his thought process. And it's worked very well for us. It gives it a far enough time horizon that things that need to have patience to play out or some planning to play out, you've got time to do that. But it's also not so far away that you're like, that's never going to happen, right? It's close enough to be tangible. And the goal there as a leader is to create a vivid vision that is descriptive enough of where you are 3 years from now. So you're writing it almost in the past tense. You're like, this is where I see my business 3 years from now. And you can do this not just for your business. You should do this in your personal life. Where do you see yourself, your family, your accomplishments, your goals 3 years from now? Write it in the past tense. But what you got to be careful of doing is you don't want to, especially if you're leading others, to tell them how to get there. Right? Because, and you don't want to get bogged down with the how as a leader. You want to create the parameters of where you want to go, and you want your team to be able to help you get there and navigate it based on their skills, their unique capabilities from that standpoint. But you need to be specific enough. You can't go, hey, I want to have a 3-bedroom house and a 2-car garage. Right. Because your version in your head, when I say a 3-bedroom house and a 2-car garage, is different than mine, is different than Mike's, is different than Danny's, and anybody else that's out there. You need to get specific. Like, I want a colonial. I want a red door. I want my kitchen to look like this. I want my floors to look like this. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying how to do it. Right. But I want to be very specific in what my vision is as much as I can be at that time, because there's also certain things that are unknown, right? So we created one coming out of COVID for 2001 through 2023. And where we're at right now is part of that, right? A lot of that vivid vision is, hey, we're going to come back out of COVID. What are we going to need to do that? Where are we going to be 3 years from now? We're going to need to have a building. We're going to need to have everything under one roof. We're going to need to have newer technologies, newer capabilities, et cetera. And we achieved almost all of it, right? I mean, and it's amazing to see what our team was able to contribute and do to create where we are now. And this next one is then painting out, okay, now we've achieved that. Some of the things were culture related. Some of the things were things that are going to be ongoing that continue from one vision to another or to the next. But now it is, where are we going from here? What is the evolution of what Creative Works is to the best of my ability with as much detail as possible so that our team can help us achieve that.
You know, one thing that I loved that I call it, like, it's almost like trickle down education. So as you came up with, you know, had come across the Vivid Vision piece and then had each of the department leaders, it's like, okay, come up with one that is specific to your department. Like if you know that this is the North Star, do one that's a little bit more granular and focused around your immediate tangibles. And so then for me to then take that and say, okay, it's 3 years from now, here's what customers' responses are to the product that they're seeing. Here's the impact that that's having for their guests. Here are tools or systems that we have in place that are allowing us as a sales team or the marketing team to specifically enact towards those pieces. And so that allowed us, again, to still expand what the Vivid Vision was, but then get even further, more direct buy-in from individual team members in their roles to do it. But the thing that I really enjoyed most about this process was also still taking in, hey, there are certain aspects of, hey, you know, this is my vision for where we want to go, but also saying, not necessarily the tyranny of how, as you were talking about before, but what else should be a part of this that I haven't thought of that you guys see as a direct benefit that with those folks. And so even having other sales team members coming up and talking about, oh, it'd be really awesome if this, you know, this was a part of it, or we expanded in this market or this vertical and those kinds of things. And so it was just I've really enjoyed that process because it, to your point, it was everybody now is looking at the same kind of television screen as opposed to the picture in their mind, where we all have baselines and things that we know, hey, this is how we're defining this success once we cross that threshold. But then how do we even get it more bespoke to each team member's role?
Yeah. And from that standpoint too, what we had to do is I set that North Star, so to speak, and where we want to be 3 years from now. And then as each of you guys did this in the first Vivid Vision, and we're about to start it with our core leaders for this Vivid Vision of creating that within your silos, so to speak, or your teams and departments, it also allows it to become personal on your guys' side.
Yeah.
Right. And because I'm not worried about the how, as long as we get to where we want to go, it allows you to have input as a leader at that next level to create that direction, to create that drive, to have your connection to it. And it makes it much more likely that we're going to achieve it.
Yeah.
Because there's a personal buy-in, a personal investment that is now able to be created. And it's been amazing as we just, you know, unveiled it to our team, you know, last week for where we're going for the next couple of years. How many of them have come up to me personally and said something about already having read it? They're excited about X, Y, Z, whatever it is that may be in there. Or have, you know, said, hey, this part, you know, can you give me some additional clarity here? Because maybe I wasn't as clear to them and they wanted to get some context, whatever the case may be. Or seeing the weekly reports at the end of last week of how many people were like, oh, that was awesome to hear this. Super excited to see that we're going and growing again.
Yeah.
And especially for those that were here for the first Vivid Vision, so to speak,
and saw it actually come to fruition.
Yeah, like it gives them,
they know
it's no longer just
record.
lip service, right? It's like, oh, he's just shooting some high pie in the sky idea. It's no, he's going to try and be a driving force to make this happen.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this great idea of, you know, the person that has a delusional optimism and just, you know, the hustle, the motivation to continue going forward over that time horizon, they're going to make it happen. Like they're going to get there as long as you've got the, what is that term that Tony Robbins uses? like massive
action,
massive action, right?
Massive action.
So the person that takes that massive action and has the optimism that they're going to succeed, if you give them a time horizon, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going to let obstacles, get in the way.
Yeah. I think the other aspect and on that vivid vision that's also been really groovy to see folks respond to well is if we're, as part of that, saying, hey, we're going to open up this as an expanded scope of service, or we're going to bring this on, and these are new frontiers that we're also going to take on, having team members go, oh, that is a future area of growth that I can see myself, exploring further. So giving them, hey, in 3 years, like you may have a better and different job still with creative works, but in this new track or being able to lean in more with that. So making sure that everybody on the team sees some sort of path forward for growth within themselves and being able to work towards the betterment of the company too.
And it's hard because even though Creative Arts has grown tremendously, let's say over the last 6, 7, 8 years, we're still a small company. Right. And most of our clients are still small companies. And so a lot of times when you're in a small company, you're wider than you are deep, right? There's not some large corporate ladder to grow. Right. But if you've painted this vision and you've shown them a track record of being able to achieve it and to get to where you're going, it's exactly as you said. It lets them know that, hey, there may not even, the position that I'm going to be in 3 years from now may not even exist today. Right. The department may not even exist today. And knowing that if I'm an operator, let's say like one of our clients, like, hey, in center number 1, me as the owner, I am the GM, I am the end all be all. But at some point I have a desire to open venue number 2, venue number 3, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to need to now be over all of those things. So now there's multiple, opportunities for growth from our team members.
Well, and that opens up an interesting point too, because as you do get into that growth and expansion and people aren't going to be in the same role or the same scope that they are today 3 years from now, it also then helps us figure out like, okay, if we want problem solving and empowered team members, what do we need to have for that? And one of the biggest things that you've been hitting on over the last few months, especially as we've been really intentional with this, is like, our job is to now be planning succession, right? And so
tell me a little bit.
Right.
The moment I said, hey guys, we're going to start talking about succession planning here. Everybody's like, whoa, where are you going? What's happening? And it's because normally, you watch the show, like they even got a show called Succession, right? The idea is that somebody's going to retire, pass away, whatever the case may be, move on to a different direction. And it doesn't have to be that. As a business grows, as a company grows, succession planning is about you setting up all the processes, all the procedures, and training somebody to take your job. Not so that you can be fired, not so that you can retire, but so that you can do the next great thing. And for people that want to have that growth, sometimes they get lost in that. They're only looking forward and going, well, that's where I want to be. Right. Well, if I'm somewhere, let's say in the middle hierarchy of a company or even at the bottom rung of a company, the only way I can fill a spot in the next rung up or in the next company that's created, whatever the case may be, without creating friction is I've got to have a way for somebody to take over what I'm doing now. Otherwise, you're creating a scenario that the only way to grow is to hire from outside the organization. It's a lot easier, especially if you've got a business as nuanced as it is to be in the attractions industry, whether you're on the supplier side or the operator side. It's a lot easier to hire in somebody new at a lower entry position and to move somebody up because they've learned so much of the nuance and the detail that you can't get into every possible situation of what's going to take place on a Saturday and how you're going to react to it. Like some of it is just trial by fire, right?
Reps under your belt and you go, ooh, okay, we've seen how this is played out typically, so you can have a little bit more of informed
extrapolation. There you go. And so from that standpoint, like that's the whole point of succession is I need to create a duplicate of me behind me. And I've got to understand that with that replacement, even if I am as diligent as I can be about creating, if X happens, then Y, and here's how you do ABC, they're going to do it different than me. There's going to be tribal knowledge that no matter how thorough I think I am being, that I'm not going to think of when I create that
just
background.
Get Neuralink from Elon and
Correct.
just get everybody hooked up. And
I'm in, by the way. But it's one of those pieces that, like, your goal is to create as much of a process behind you, but realize that your goal is to get them to the 80% of you, not the 100% of you.
Right.
That other 20% is going to come from them. It's going to come from their unique capabilities. You know, even though you and I do a lot of things similarly, there's other things that you're far better at than I am, and vice versa, right? Whether that's anybody else on the core leadership team, anybody else, you know, throughout the hierarchy of our overall company and organization. And that 20% is going to be coming from that person's unique perspective, unique life experiences, unique capabilities and skill set. And then that cycle should repeat itself again.
Yeah, I love that. So as you get into that succession and if you're coaching and pouring into your team members that are eventually there to replace you, so again, we can expand the horizon and the frontier, what are some of the biggest obstacles or kind of false ideals that folks hold on to just by human nature? You know, one of the big things I think that you typically coach up on is things like most mistakes are not fatal, right? So if someone's you're backfilling a position that you know you have this position, this person's going to move out and grow, this person has their 20% take on it. How do we allow them to, again, put their stamp on it, do it their way, and utilize their unique talents without this fear of, well, this is the way that it's always been done, and only playing off the playbook, whereas get ready for some sports talk. Ready?
Right.
Travis Kelce not having predefined routes and things and being able to find those gaps and making it his way. Like,
it's got to become the backyard play sometimes, 100%. Right? Got to become that backyard play.
And we're figuring stuff out, and new challenges come up that weren't in place before. Like, so talk to me a little bit more of just your philosophy around it's actually a good thing if we're making some mistakes.
Correct. Look, it's one of those pieces. There's a couple different components there. One is exactly as you said. I follow the mantra that most mistakes are not fatal, right? If the mistake you made doesn't end the business, or doesn't end somebody's life, right? Whatever the case may be, however extreme you want to take it, then it wasn't fatal. Doesn't mean it didn't hurt.
Right.
Doesn't mean it wasn't expensive. Doesn't mean it didn't cost you a customer, a future opportunity or whatnot. But it wasn't fatal. And so the only time that mistake is not valuable is if you didn't learn from it. And so it's making sure that, yes, we made a mistake, own up to it, understand how, why, do a postmortem, and then move forward, right? If we're dwelling on those pieces, then we're not keeping things in perspective, right? There's an element of perspective that you have to have. There's an element of gratitude that you have to have. It's one of those things that Gary Vee even sometimes talks about. Is like, look, there's 60% of the population on this planet doesn't have a toilet that flushes. Like, did you wake up today with a roof over your head, with running water, with a toilet that flushes, with food, right? Then put that into perspective of how much gratitude you should have and whatever issue that you're trying to resolve or that went wrong, what that is and what that really is. And again, it doesn't mean that mistake didn't hurt. It just means that it wasn't fatal. And so you don't take a person and start screaming at them in a boardroom. Like, I don't understand leaders that do that. Like, it boggles my mind. It's like, what are you expecting to get out of that person? Are they going to come out of that and go, I'm ready to win for you now? Like, it just makes no sense, you know, that type of mentality. So I'm very big on that. And sometimes people also, and this is one that I just saw from Alex Ramsey the other day, where he was talking about the idea that people don't want to do something until they know everything about it. Right? Or they're only comfortable once they know everything. Well, the problem is from that standpoint,
it's a great way to punt and delay.
It really is. It's a way to never take that step.
Yeah.
It also means that you're not growing, that you're stagnating. Because if you know everything about something, then that means you're not pushing yourself. you're not doing something, you're not getting out of your comfort zone, you're not trying something new. And ironically, that same person is like, oh man, I want to do this great new thing. Well, those are two juxtaposed positions.
Right.
You can't have the new while knowing and being comfortable in everything. You've got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, try the unknown, try the new. And it's one of those pieces that, whether you're on the attraction side or you're on the operation side, sometimes you also get this great idea and you want to create it and you want to do it and you implement it. And then you go, that customer or that client didn't react the way I thought they were going to, right? Because they come to it with their own viewpoint. They come to it with their own past experiences. And they look at something a little bit differently than you are. Mm-hmm. When we're creating something or when somebody is, whether it's a package, a process, a product, whatever, you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to your own biases and getting out of your way. And part of that is you got to try it. You got to do it, get feedback, and iterate quickly. Right. And along those same lines, one of the other pieces that we've adopted lately, and I keep name dropping a lot of people, but it's emphasizing the point that you should be seeing inspiration everywhere, especially if you're a leader. You should be constantly looking for new ideas, new concepts, new thought processes to bring in and adapt to your own. Yeah. And so Jeff Bezos had this thing. He was on a podcast with Lex Friedman, and he talked about one of his concepts of most decisions are two-way doors. It's the same concept. And when it's a two-way door for that decision, your goal should be to move quickly, be decisive, choose to go through it, understanding that in most cases, if it didn't work out, if it's not the right choice, you can come back through that door. It wasn't a one-way door. It wasn't fatal.
It's not Caesar burning the boats in every situation.
Yeah. Now, are there certain decisions that are that? Yes. And in those decisions, take your time, be deliberate, get as many points of information as you can, but make sure that you're not treating every decision that way, because otherwise you will slow to a crawl and you'll not innovate as a business, as a service provider, or anything along those lines.
Well, I think that mindset really encapsulates, and it was one of those things, and Scott Logan and I were talking in one of the previous episodes as well, of sometimes it's just being free to, like you said, experiment, tinker, try new things, push frontiers, be able to get that feedback in, make adjustments, and then, put it out to sea again. So that way you can try to do that. But, even just internally, as we call ourselves a bunch of mad scientists, right? Like, I love that idea of we need to be constantly looking for ways to be able to try new things and see, okay, well, that's the way that we've done it, but what else is out there? Staying current, staying fresh, not just on the philosophical approach and our cultural, fabric that we have, but with the products themselves and doing all of that.
Well, and from that standpoint, if we go back to what we were just talking about there too, if you don't allow your team to experiment, to try things without the fear of you coming over the top and going, how dare you? How did you? Why could you? You were so dumb, XY. Like, that's just silly.
Congratulations, that employee is never putting themselves out
there.
They
will never take a chance again. They will never innovate for you again.
Right.
You have completely crushed all creativity.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't give constructive feedback.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you can't work together to work through that. But you can't crush their dreams in one moment and then complain that they're not dreaming in the next, right? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I think that even with things like our decision filter that we put in with our team has started to help give that, like, hey, we need everybody, if we're going to be successful, and this is what our vision is for 3 years from now, we're not going to get that by me micromanaging and prescribing to you how we're going to get there. And so when it does get into the how of that execution, it's been awesome. And we've actually started putting it up around the building and again, living this language in our meetings and everything else is this idea of a decision filter, that if any employee, and it's the same decision filter that we have across the entire company,
from an entry-level team member to a person that's been here since the beginning,
all the way, it is what is a safe framework that you can use to kind of litmus test something and making sure that the intention or the rationale behind it is falling in line with that. So talk to me a little bit about the decision filter that we've put in place, some of the kind of key sub filters, I guess, of the decision filter. So that way, again, because it's been wonderful for us to be able to turn the team a little bit more loose or freer. Still have a controlled backyard, but a big backyard, but we're just not leaving, it's a fence with an open gate as opposed to just wide open spaces for people to go ham.
So the decision filter was something that I conceived of while just working through various issues at the company and wanting people to have a level of autonomy with the idea of, every leader wants somebody to think like they're a business owner. And that's a very cliche, easy thing to say. Everybody wants to say, I want my team to operate with autonomy. It's a very easy, cliche thing to say, especially if then, again, you come down on them for the decisions that they make with that autonomy. And so the idea of the decision filters, I was creating this vivid vision for the next 3 years. I think I enacted it right around fourth quarter last year, sometime early fourth quarter and the third quarter. And the idea was when you come across a decision and in a pivot point, let's say, that you need to make as a team member, regardless of where you're at in that hierarchy, here are the things you need to think about. And as long as you've thought about these things, when we do have a postmortem because it went well or it went sideways, whatever the case may be, that if you've gone through this process and you've put some thought into it, like, we're good. Like, it wasn't a fatal decision. Even if it didn't go right, you're good. And part of that is just also thinking about what's important for us as a business. So we broke it down into 3 constituents. The first constituent is the guest. It's not even our clients. It's not our, people that we're doing business with. Our first decision filter has to do with who's the end user. And that goes back to why we're in business. We're in business to create memories. So the very first thing in the first decision filter is when a guest of any type, based on the attraction, experiences our attraction, was it a memorable experience? Did they have a good time? Was it enjoyable?
Would they do it again?
Is it repeatable? Is it, because then that starts to play into the later filters down the line. Is it repeatable? Do they want to do it again? Is it scalable, right? Like, those are the things that are important at that early stage. And that's the first thing, and was something that we did to create that memory meaningful. So did we develop that product, and is that extra piece we added, did it actually have an impact on that final guest experience? Right. Then the second constituent is our clients. That client needs to know that the product is going to ROI for them, right? Going back to, was it memorable? Was it fun? Yeah. Was it repeatable?
It's great, but it's expensive as hell.
Correct. It's like, are they willing to do it? Are they able to make money on it because somebody found value in the experience that they're willing to pay for it again? They got excited when they saw it, right? Sometimes it's about ensuring that, what on an attraction on that first decision filter, it's exciting for them to even try it in the first place. Right. Making sure that's got the curb appeal. And then in that second filter for the client is, it's got to be profitable. It's got to be serviceable. So many people, this is one of those things that I think that we've been very fortunate to take the viewpoint of, with so many of us having an operational background, whether it be Mark on our operations and product development side in his time in operations, as well as Zach and Brett, who also worked during our support and IT department. Geniuses. Whether it's you and Danny and Nick and others on the sales side that have those integrations. It's, what do we want it to do in our venue if we are putting in our own venue? And we also know that no matter what we say or any manufacturer says, at some point something's going to break. Yeah,
not if,
when. Right. It's exactly. It's not an if, it's a when.
And it's typically not on a Monday at 11 a.m. when you've got plenty of time to get a hold of somebody.
If only, right? And so, first it's got to be profitable for the client, but then it's got to be serviceable. Did we design it in a way that it's easily able to be serviced? And that was a thing that we needed to bring further into the forefront, right, for our attractions, and make sure that we're taking care of that for our clients. And then the final constituent is our team and the company, right? Did we think about, as we designed and engineered and created something or made a decision, who the next person downstream in our company is going to be and how they're going to have to deal with it, whether it be design and engineering going into production going into service and support, the installations and how it's going to get put in.
A door doesn't weigh
Correct.
700 pounds. And laws of physics.
Right,
having their
exactly.
say.
All those things. And so it was making sure that as we put in that decision filters, we gave guidelines of saying, hey, if you've thought about it through these filters, then we're going to have faith in the decision that you make. And most of the time, if you've put thought in it and gone through those filters, it's often going to be the right decision in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? Like as long as you've taken that time and not gotten so focused on what's good for you as an individual, and you're looking at what those broader pieces are and remembering why we do it.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I think that is a perfect place for us to wrap up.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much. I always enjoy us being able to nerd out a little bit and get after it.
And look here, I got some grief here. I got some grief here.
Oh no.
I'm a little perturbed that it took Danny climbing a mountain on a different continent.
Yeah.
For me to be able to be a part of this show. So
well, to be fair, he lives near the mountains here in the States, so we really had to get him outside of the continental U.S. in order to free up a spot on the roster. Well, that's an up that, you know what, hands up, I'll own that. You know,
I appreciate that.
It was an underutilized resource that we were not taking advantage of.
No worries.
Love this, and thank you so much. So if you guys like what you heard today, and appreciate those of you who are watching as well, don't forget to give us a subscribe and leave us a review. We love those 5 stars, please and thank you. If you have any ideas for future episodes, as you guys know, we're rolling these out every week. We'd love to be able to get input from you guys, so that way we can speak to what you guys are seeing on the daily with that. And I also want to give a big shout out to Mikey Mike on the 1s and 2s running the Ultranet with us. And thank you guys so much for giving your time to this podcast, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Mic check. 1 2 1 3.
1 2 1 3. I'm gonna have that get up a little bit closer to you. Stop it. Here, there you go.
You know, I want to create a cooking channel called Only Pans. Martha Stewart's got that copyright. That's on the blooper reel.
Oh, I like OnlyPans better than Click Clack too.
Yeah, OnlyPans.
Okay. Facial. You gotta stretch it out. The blackmail content that Mike has on me between just oh boy, it'll make an interesting coffee table book of just candid stills that Mike has from all of these videos. All right, Mike, I'm ready whenever you are, brother. All right. Cool. You guys ready? Yeah.
Yes, sir.